Unveiled, 3 spine-chilling true night shift horror stories that reveal sinister secrets. Sarah stood at the entrance of Cedar Creek Hospital, the flickering fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like tormented insects. Night after night, she'd sworn to protect and heal, but something felt off. Weird shadows danced along the walls, darting figures in her periphery that vanished whenever she turned. The air grew thick with whispers, their ghostly echoes summoning her dark thoughts. What's wrong with me? She wondered, her heart pounding with anxiety, her confidence wilted with every round she made in the eerily quiet halls. She'd heard tales of unfinished renovations, missing patients, the tragedy surrounding the long-silenced nurse whose chilling secrets had turned her own world into that of horror. Now, with her family drifting away due to her relentless shifts, Sarah couldn't help but contemplate the unsettling reality. Was she losing herself in the very place meant to save lives? Hey, Sarah! The cheerful voice of Mr. Harris, her neighbor, interrupted her thoughts as he waved from the hospital parking lot, broad smile plastered on his face. He always seemed ecstatic to help her with errands or meals. But that smile? It felt off, as if hiding something sinister beneath. Was he just a concerned neighbor, or was there something more? She could hear the whispers again, calling her name in ways that made her skin crawl. With a quick shake of her head, she brushed off his friendliness, focusing instead on her duties. But each creak of the building sent spikes of dread racing down her spine. The maternity ward, once bustling with laughter and joy, stood darkened and silent, eerie whispers escaping its sealed doors. Sarah could almost make out the faces of every patient she had cared for, flickering before her, their eyes watching, waiting. Before she could catch her breath, the hospital intercom blared, a stark warning slicing through the stillness like a knife. Attention all staff, a nurse has gone missing. Panic surged through the halls as frantic murmurs filled the air. Faces turned pale, fear coursing through her colleagues like ice water. Sarah's heart raced. What was happening? No. It can't be real, she whispered as the whispers grew deafening, shadowy shapes shifting subtly in her vision. What if Mr. Harris had known something, plotted something against her? Her mind spiraled out of control. As fear took root, she resolved to confront the haunting past of Cedar Creek. Could the answers lay within the abandoned wing? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Her feet found their own way to the corridor leading to the forsaken area, heart pounding like thunder. What hidden truths waited in the shadows? Goosebumps prickled her skin as the whispers morphed into frantic shouts, echoing her name. The temperature dropped around her, the air thickened with dread. Suddenly, she stepped through the threshold, and the walls closed in, the feeling of being watched overwhelming. Everything came to a head. Was this a futile search for truth, or was darkness beckoning her deeper? The lens of the hospital shifted, and she realized too late that finding the truth could mean losing herself entirely, like those before her. Would she unravel the threads binding her to this ghastly place, or would she too vanish into the shadows forever? The corridor stretched endlessly, its dim light barely piercing the heaviness that hung in the air. Sarah's footsteps echoed like a ghostly refrain, fading and swelling in the stale silence. She swallowed hard, fighting the urge to turn back. What if it was all true? What if this abandoned wing held more than just long-forgotten rooms? The walls seemed to curl under the strain of past sorrows, dark stains trailing down like dried tears. A sense of dread wrapped around her chest, tightening with each step. Then she saw them faint outlines of figures flickering at the edge of her vision. Heart hammering, she shook her head, trying to clear the phantoms invading her reality. Drawing a deep breath, Sarah pushed onward. The maternity ward's whispers faded into mere echoes, replaced by the futile cries of her own thoughts. Where could the lost nurse be? The missing patients? Every story she heard read like an inscription carved onto her very soul, each one warning her of what lay ahead. But boiling curiosity urged her deeper into the bowels of Cedar Creek. As she passed through the threshold into the abandoned room, the air shifted. It felt suffocating, a thick blanket of foreboding wrapping tightly around her. Shadows blanketed the corners, twisting and curling like sinister specters. In the far corner stood an old, rusted bed, chains coiling around its frame like some grotesque prison on display. Just as she was coming closer, a cold gust whipped through the room, sending chills racking her body. "Help me." The voice was faint, fragile, a mere whisper punctured by dread. "Who's there?" she stammered, breath hitching in her throat. Was it even real? Panic surged anew. Help, again, more forceful this time, pregnant with urgency, yet chillingly void of hope. It was a call that echoed through the decay of the hospital walls, wrapping around her heart, knitting dread and sorrow into one heavy fabric of terror. Sarah jolted back, eyes darting as she scoured the room for signs of life, and there it was. A figure crouched in the shadows, huddled against the far wall, head hanging low. "Is someone there?" she called out, her voice trembling. The figure raised its head, and Sarah gasped in horror. It was the nurse, eyes wide but hollow and dark like an endless void. "They won't let you leave, you can't trust anyone." The words came slow, thick with despair. "But how?" Sarah pressed forward, her mind racing. "How can I help you?" "Find him, before it's too late," the nurse whispered, her voice fading into a wisp, a breathless wind dissipating in the vast emptiness of the room. Without thinking, Sarah stumbled backwards, heart pounding, racing towards the door. The walls seemed to close in, the whispers rising to a bone-chilling crescendo. The feeling of being watched intensified, and the shadows lunged forward, threatening to devour her whole. The truth, the savior she yearned for, twisted into a nightmare. Suddenly, Mr. Harris appeared in the dim light of the hallway. His face was a mask of concern, but an unsettling glimmer in his eye sent waves of dread crashing over her again. "Sarah, what are you doing down here?" he asked, his tone dripping with a sickly sweet tension. "You shouldn't be here, it's not safe." Her heart raced as she retreated further into the darkness. What lay ahead? What loomed in the corners of Cedar Creek? The tension tightened to a breaking point. The truth may very well compel her to confront not just the forgotten past, but the eerie familiarity woven through the present. "Trust me, Sarah," he said, stepping closer, but the shadows churned behind him, dark and hungry. And just like that, the lights flickered ominously one last time before plunging her into inky blackness. Before she could scream, everything went silent. The darkness enveloped her like a suffocating shroud. Sarah's breaths came short and quick, panic swimming in her chest. The absurdity of her situation collided with the primal urge to survive. Instinctively, she fumbled for the door, her fingers brushing against the cold metal handle as dread clawed at her insides. "Sarah!" Mr. Harris's voice slithered through the blackness, somehow closer yet echoing from down the corridor. Had he moved? The fear of the unknown twisted in knots. She couldn't remain trapped in this room, not with him lurking nearby. With a surge of determination, she twisted the handle and pushed the door open. Light filtered in a sliver, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the stale air. Heart thundering, she stepped into the corridor, half expecting to see a wisp of shadow following her. But now, in the hallway, it felt eerie, like stepping into the eye of a storm. Silence wrapped around her, heavy, thick. She pressed forward, shaking off a shiver that crept down her spine. Where to go? Every direction seemed to harrow her with equal weight. Each corner could hide a nightmare. Where is he? The nurse's words rooted deep, a gnawing anxiety only heightened by the secrets shrouded in the walls. Who was she supposed to find? The sense of time lurking like a predator grew relentless in her mind. As she paced cautiously, the overhead lights flickered again, casting an unnatural glow that seemed to retreat and advance like a pulse. She could almost hear the walls whispering, what stories did they contain? Suddenly, a shout pierced the stillness. A voice echoed from further down the corridor. "Help! Someone help me!" It was raw, desperate, and striking in its urgency. Sarah froze, her heart racing. Who was it? Should she dare to venture further into this spiral of chaos? She felt gnarled hands of indecision clinging to her, but the plea called to her senses. Driven by a mix of fear and determination, she moved toward the sound, her footfalls a tentative rhythm against the cold tile. Each step echoed louder than the last, as if announcing her presence to whatever lay in wait. The voice grew clearer as she approached. "Help! Please! I can't." A chilling silence fell abruptly, snuffing the last flicker of hope she felt. "Hello?" She called out, her voice trembling but loud. She strained to listen, desperate for any response. Just then, a figure lunged from the shadows. It was a man, disheveled and frantic, his eyes wild with a fit of terror. "You have to leave. They're here. They'll take you too." "Who?" She breathed, confusion splintering her sense of reality. Without warning, distant voices echoed through the corridor, whispers rasping her name, a chorus of shadows reaching out to her through the darkness. But behind the man, a vague figure flickered in and out of view, a twisted semblance of familiarity. "Run!" he screamed, but it was too late. The walls pulsated, and she could feel the cold weight of their secrets pressing against her skin, drowning out her thoughts. As she turned to flee, the darkness swirling around her whispered her fears into her ear, whispers of the past, of the nurse's warnings and Mr. Harris's glimmering eyes. And as she made her escape, she understood that the corridor wasn't just a passage, it was a labyrinth of lost souls, where every choice led to hidden horrors. But what if the real danger wasn't the shadows lurking in the corners? What if it was something much closer? Desperate breaths quickened as she ran, chasing the echoes of her fate, tainted and entwined with truth and terror. "Sarah!" echoed a voice, distant yet strikingly familiar. And just like that, she stopped. What if the real horror wasn't the shadows? What if it was the truth waiting to be unveiled right behind her? A shiver crept down Sarah's spine as the voice hung in the air, lingering heavily like fog. She turned slowly, dread settling solidly in her gut. "Who's there?" she called, her voice shaking, barely loud enough to pierce the encroaching silence. "Sarah," it came again, softer this time, almost intimate, yet laced with foreboding. Her heart raced. It was unmistakably Mr. Harris's voice, but altered, tinged with something sinister. Fear clawed at her, urging her to run, yet morbid curiosity rooted her feet to the ground. The dim light flickered above, throwing shadows that twisted and morphed against the walls, making her feel like she was surrounded by eyes, watching, waiting. She steeled herself and asked, "Where are you?" "Here, Sarah," he whispered, the words wrapping around her like a noose. "I've been waiting." Then came a soft laugh, sickly sweet. It echoed in the emptiness, each note dripping with malice. Panic surged within her, and she spun back toward the corridor, intent on fleeing. The darkness seemed alive, pressing against her, eager to consume. Yet, as she ran, a sense of urgency pulled at her. What if the truth lay not in the shadows, but in the voice she held so close to her heart? The hallway stretched endlessly before her, each turn a mocking reflection of her fear. "No, I can't think like that," she muttered under her breath, the words a flimsy shield against the oppressive atmosphere. As she picked up speed, she heard something behind her, a dragging sound, soft yet unmistakable. It sent chills through her, and she couldn't help but glance back. The man from moments ago stood there, hands outstretched in plea. But now, behind him, shadows stirred. She kept running, her legs pumping like pistons, breath hitching painfully in her throat. "Get away from me!" she screamed, though she wasn't sure who she was trying to save. The corridor began to distort, the walls warping as if they were alive, pushing in toward her. Suddenly, a door appeared, glimmering in the dim light. She didn't think. She lunged for it, yanked it open, and stumbled inside. The room was bare, save for a flickering light bulb swaying from the ceiling like a pendulum counting down her remaining hope. She slammed the door behind her, pressing her back against it, desperate for a moment of peace. Time seemed to freeze. Heavy silence reigned. She strained her ears, desperately listening for any sign of pursuit. The muffled sounds of the outside world felt distant, like another reality. And then, the whispers returned. "Sarah," they droned, echoing sweetly but sinisterly into the silence. "Come to us, you're one of us now." Her mind reeled. What did that mean? There was no time left to ponder. A sudden surge of dread propelled her feet forward. She soared toward the room's lone window, desperate to pry it open, yearning for freedom. But just as her fingers grasped the frame, a hand shot through the door, managing to crack it open. Mr. Harris's face appeared, contorting with a horrific smile that chilled her heart. "Where do you think you're going? You can't escape what's already inside you," he hissed, and the shadows behind him breathed, swirling around him like dark tendrils of smoke. Stumbling back, Sarah felt her knees hit the floor. Breathing heavily, she asked, "What are you talking about? What do you want from me?" The figure beyond the door tilted his head, his eyes gleaming with an otherworldly madness. "Oh, sweetheart, it's not what I want. It's what they want. The truth will always find you." And with that, he pushed through the door, darkness surging forth with him. In that moment of heart-stopping terror, as shadows enveloped her, Sarah realized the truth was far more horrifying than she had imagined. The walls no longer whispered secrets, they screamed them. What had she become? And what was waiting for her beyond the door? The door crashed open, and Sarah was engulfed in darkness. She felt cold air whip around her, chilling her skin. The shadows writhed, seeking her, wrapping around her like the embrace of some terrible predator. Heart racing, she scrambled backward, frantically searching for an escape, anything that could save her from what was lurking beyond. "Come on, Sarah." The voice of Mr. Harris taunted from the shadows, each syllable dripping with a twisted sense of familiarity. "You're still fighting it. You don't have to, we can do this together." She pressed her back against the wall, her fingers clawing at the rough surface, desperate for something solid to hold on to. "Get away from me!" she screamed, raw fear filling her throat like a lump of ice. As if in response, the darkness surged forward, swallowing the light bulb's last flickers. Her breaths became shallow and rapid. The staggering silence around her seemed to amplify her heartbeat, pounding in her ears. Was it panic or something worse? The shadows shifted and changed before her eyes, almost forming shapes, figures that looked eerily familiar. Faces she thought she had forgotten swirled in and out, laughing, whispering. It was like a sickening parade of nightmares. "No, no!" she gasped, shaking her head as if she could clear the images. But they persisted, drawing close, their murmurs growing louder, drowning her in their sinister symphony. "You belong to us forever." She couldn't stand it. She had to get out. The door hung ajar, awaiting her next move. With a burst of adrenaline, she surged forward, crashing against Mr. Harris's outstretched arms. He laughed again, his grin sick and wide, revealing teeth too sharp, too jagged. "Come play with me, Sarah," he crooned, a touch of madness threading through his words. With all her strength, she heaved against him, breaking free from his grasp. She raced past him, blinded by fear-fueled panic. The corridor was chaotic, full of echoes and shadows, warping around her like a living maze. Her feet pounded against the floor, echoing her despair, her breath quickening. "No! You can't leave!" A wave of darkness followed, hot on her heels, filling the space behind her like a living creature, grasping, clawing. Suddenly, she found herself standing at a fork, two paths, each cloaked in shadows. She hesitated. A light flickered at the end of the left corridor, but the right hung thick with darkness, whispering secrets of her past. What if Mr. Harris still wanted her in that darkness? Could he still be near? In her gut, she knew she had to make a choice. Whatever lurked ahead was likely to consume her, but the question remained, which path would lead her to safety or doom? She summoned her courage and raced toward the flickering light, praying it would be her salvation. The corridor stretched before her, and just as she reached the end, the lights exploded, flooding the space with a blinding brightness. She shielded her eyes, and when the glare subsided, she found herself standing in an unfamiliar room. What is this? Where am I? She whispered, confusion swirling inside her. A voice pierced the silence, one she hadn't heard in years. Welcome back. Her heart sank as she turned slowly, dread churning anew in her stomach. It felt too familiar, too dangerous. The figure stepped forward, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. It was someone she thought she'd left behind, someone who shouldn't be here. They smiled, but their eyes told a different story. And as Sarah stared into those eyes, the shadows whispered once more, "You're one of us now." What waited for her in this twisted reunion? Sarah was facing her past, but would it lead to her salvation or her darkest nightmare? The figure in front of Sarah moved closer, the familiar features sharpening into focus. It was her brother, Jason. A smile stretched across his face, but it didn't reach his eyes. Those eyes were empty, devoid of warmth, swirling with shadows of their own. "Sarah," he said softly, the voice wrapping around her like fog. "I've missed you so much." Months of horror flooded back the day he vanished, the frantic searches, the whispers of fate that had clung to her heart like poison ivy. You shouldn't be here," she stammered, stepping back instinctively, her pulse quickening. "Oh, but I am," he replied, his tone dripping with a sinister ease. The shadows seemed to pulse and breathe around him, as if drawn to him. "It's all part of the plan." "What plan?" Sarah asked, fear prickling her skin. The room, dimly lit by a single flickering bulb, felt alive with an unsettling energy. Jason chuckled softly, tilting his head. "You'll understand soon enough." As he spoke, something within her stirred a chilling sense of inevitability. The light flickered again, and for a brief second, Sarah saw faces in the shadows behind him. They twisted and swayed, their whispers curling around her, beckoning her closer. "Join us, come home." "No!" she screamed, her voice trembling. The memories of their childhood rushed back, the warmth of their home, the adventures they shared, now perverted into this grotesque shadow play. With each second, the room felt smaller. The walls pulsed rhythmically, closing in. She could feel cold fingers clawing at her resolve, urging her to step into the dark, to surrender. The air grew thick, stifling her breaths. "I'm here to help you, Sarah," Jason urged, his voice turning smooth and oily. "You don't need to resist. Embrace what you've always feared." "Help? You call this help?" she shouted, disgust rolling in her stomach. "You've become something else, a monster." The laughter echoed, cruel and unyielding. Shadows flickered violently, a riot of movement that made Sarah's stomach churn. She thought of all the lives taken by darkness, the people consumed. Jason stood at the center of it all, unscathed, but she could tell he was not the brother she once knew. "Come with me," he coaxed, extending a hand. "Together, we can rule the darkness." For a moment, Sarah's fear faltered, a thread of temptation wrapping around her heart. Could she really join him, escape this life of fear and pain? But deep inside, she heard the faintest whisper of her will know. "I'll never join you." Suddenly, Jason's expression twisted, a flash of fury breaking through his calm facade. "You think you can resist? You think you're different? Everyone is drawn to the dark eventually." With a swift movement, he lunged forward, shadows swirling around his body like a living shroud. Sarah's instincts kicked in. She twisted away, heart racing as she darted for the door opposite of the one she entered. The space warped, every object contorted in conflicting reality, a sickening buzz in her ears. "Leave and you'll never escape." Jason's voice boomed, reverberating in the room like thunder. "You can't run from your past." Panic surged through her, turning to raw adrenaline. She thrust the door open, bursting out into another corridor drenched in darkness, her breath a frantic echo. The path forked again, one shrouded in a thick veil of fog, the other pulsating with distant misery and the sounds of sobs. Each option felt equally perilous, shadows clinging to her heels. "Choose." A chorus of voices called out, rising like a gale, merging into a cacophony. Heart pounding, Sarah glanced back at the opening door. Jason stood silhouetted against the dim light, an ominous figure beckoning her back into the dark. Which path would she choose? Her heart raced with dread as she stepped forward, the weight of the choice heavy on her soul but unknown to her. The path she chose would not just lead to safety. It promised to unveil secrets buried deep, ones that would change everything she thought she knew about danger, darkness, and the ones she loved. As Sarah hesitated at the threshold, the question lingered in her mind: what horrors would the truth reveal? She took a deep breath and stepped into the fog. As she moved forward, the air grew colder, wrapping around her like a damp blanket. The whispers intensified, swirling around her head, subtle at first, but soon they morphed into a maddening swell of voices. Her heart raced, matching the irregular tempo of the growing cacophony. "Sarah, join us, don't you want to belong?" Every fiber of her being screamed to turn back, to flee from those haunting tones. Yet, the fog thickened, almost as if it were sentient, tugging her deeper into its embrace. Shadows danced in her peripheral vision, and she caught sight of faces distorted, anguished, eyes wide with terror that matched her own. "Bring her to us," they wailed in a dissonant chorus. Her pulse hammered in her ears. "No. I want tea," she shouted, desperate to drown out the clamor. But just as she thought to retreat, a flicker of light caught her eye. In the distance, dim and flickering like a dying star, was another door. Instinct pushed her forward. Step by step, she waded through the suffocating fog, and as she moved, the shadows twisted and writhed around her, reaching for her with skeletal fingers. The cries morphed into shrieks as they lunged toward her, urging her to turn back. "Sarah, he is not your brother. Don't let him deceive you." The revelation crashed over her like ice water, shocking her into stillness. Was Jason truly lost? Her thoughts churned, a tempest of confusion and despair. She forced herself to keep moving, each step feeling heavier than the last. Finally, she reached the door, a weathered wooden slab adorned with dark iron hinges. Suddenly, the whispers ceased. The silence felt oppressive, wrapping around her throat like a noose. Gritting her teeth, she flung the door open and stumbled through. The room inside was lit by a series of candles perched atop a dusty altar. A strange atmosphere flooded her senses, heavy with the sense of burnt sage and something far more pungent. The walls were lined with mirrors, its glass coated with layers of grime that seemed to hide reflections of darkness itself. As she ventured deeper, a figure emerged from the shadows behind the altar, tall, cloaked, with a face hidden beneath a hood. "Welcome, Sarah. You've come seeking truth," the figure said, its voice low and gravelly. What are you?" she gasped, heart racing again. The specter stepped closer, revealing a glint of silver beneath the hood. "It matters not who I am. What matters is what you seek. You're torn between two paths. One leads to light, the other to darkness, and the choice is never simple." Chills raced down her spine. "What do you mean?" "Jason's fate is intertwined with yours. But only you can sever the bond. Choose wisely." He gestured to the mirrors. One was cracked, reflecting a warped version of her brother, eyes hollow and haunting. The other shimmered, offering a glimpse of a world illuminated by warmth and love. Sarah stood at the threshold of the truth, panic merging with dread. Was Jason actually within reach of salvation? Or was she merely chasing a ghost, a sliver of hope splintered by dark reality? The figure's patience lingered, and with a final whisper, it urged her, step closer but be forewarned, ignorance can be a grace, and truth can be a curse. Sarah's heart thudded in her chest. She had to decide. Which reflection did she dare approach? With newfound resolve, she took a step forward, but shadows darted at her heels, whispering dangers into her ear. In that critical moment of indecision, the ground beneath her shifted, the mirrors trembling like storm-tossed glass. The fog re-emerged, swirling with renewed fury, and she realized the only thing worse than choosing was having no choice at all. What would the truth unveil? She could feel the pressure mounting as she prepared to confront it. Would it bring her closer to Jason, or shatter her hopes irreparably? And as the shadows coiled tighter, she braced herself for the revelation that could change everything forever. A jolt of energy shot through Sarah as her foot met the cold stone floor. The mirrors echoed her momentum, though they reflected an energy more like despair than determination. The figure remained still as she weighed her options, the tension in the air thick enough to cut. With each beat of her heart, the shadows morphed and swirled, whispering agonizing secrets that she could barely comprehend. Choose. The figure's voice dripped with an unsettling calmness, as if inviting her into a dark game. The cracked mirror held an image of Jason lost and hollow, devoured by anguish. It tugged at her heart, yet the gleaming reflection in the other mirror sparkled with hope and warmth. If she could save him, she would do anything. But at what cost? Voices rose once more, a chorus of tortured spirits clawing their way into her mind. Your choice defines your fate. Choose the darkness, become one of us. Or seek the light, but know it may blind you. Sweat dripped down her temple. She closed her eyes, desperately trying to filter through the noise. Each whisper seemed to lash at her, demanding her attention. What if he is too far gone? What if I'm chasing shadows? Hurry, Sarah. The figure urged again, the urgency in his voice sharp as glass. Fear clawed at her throat. She felt the weight of the decision bearing down on her. This was not just about her brother. It was a reckoning, a choice that could doom or liberate them both. Taking a deep breath, she edged closer to the cracked mirror. The image wobbled, distorting more with each step. She could see a flicker of recognition in Jason's eyes, a desperate plea. Help me, it seemed to say. No. Echoed throughout the room, the shadows surged towards her, pulling her back. Do not listen. We call for you. Come home. With her heart pounding, she lunged towards the shimmering mirror instead. Truth can be a curse. His words rang hollow in the silence as she reached forward. The world around her bent and shifted like a funhouse mirror. Suddenly, the air crackled, and she felt a jolt, as if the fabric of reality was tearing apart. Shadows roared and tried to pull her backward, but she pressed forward, fingers stretching closer to the mirrored surface. Then the ground trembled violently, the candles flickered erratically before flickering out. Dread enveloped her as thick darkness enveloped the room. The world around her melted away. She felt a rush of air as if being pulled into a vortex, engulfed by shadows and whispers. For every action, a consequence, the figure echoed as his silhouette vanished into the growing void. Panic took over. Where was she headed? What awaited her on the other side of that glass? Her fingers brushed against the surface, smooth, cool, and alive. What was she really reaching for? The darkness pressed in, stretching and clawing at her as her emotions swirled into chaos. Would the truth be a savior or a tormentor? In that swirling abyss, clarity struck her. Jason's voice echoed in her mind, distorted yet familiar. Save me or lose yourself. Her choice now felt sharper, dissecting her very being. She had to leap, she had to know. With a deep resolve, she pushed through the mirror's surface, determined to uncover what lay beyond. But as her body surged into the unknown, a scream broke through, deep and agonizing. Sarah! No. The world erupted in a blinding flash, followed by a chilling silence. All that remained was the weight of the void around her, pressing mercilessly. What had she done? And as she floated in that infinite darkness, ice gripped her heart. Was she lost forever? Or was there still a glimmer of hope waiting to be discovered? With a final gasp, Sarah sank into the unknown, and the darkness began to mold around her, reshaping her fate before her eyes. Dread consumed Sarah as she surrendered to the darkness. It twisted and coiled around her like a serpent, the air thick with unseen malice. In every direction, shadows flitted like wraiths, their distorted whispers seeping into her thoughts, tainting her mind with fear. "Where am I?" she gasped, her voice swallowed by the void. Time felt meaningless here, each second stretching into eternity. Frantic, she tried to ground herself, but the surface beneath her wavered. No walls, no boundaries, just an endless abyss. She closed her eyes, focusing on the echo of Jason's voice. "Save me or lose yourself," it pulsed through her, igniting determination amidst the despair. Suddenly, the shadows shifted, forming a grotesque landscape that was once familiar. The old house, but wrong. The walls twisted, and the rooms bled into one another. Each corner held memories tainted by anguish, and she sensed the bugs crawling beneath her skin, fear manifesting into reality. "Sarah." The voice was low and haunting. Jason stepped from the darkness, his silhouette blending with the shadows. He looked the same, yet so broken. His eyes, once vibrant, now hollow, bore into her soul. "You shouldn't have come here." Her heart raced. "I had to save you," she cried, willing the warmth of her voice to dispel the chill surrounding them. Yet no warmth came, the shadows hissed, winding tighter around her as if mocking her resolve. "Everything dies here," he said slowly, eyes narrowing. "You should have chosen the light." "No." Panic surged, and the darkness roared in response, pushing her back. "We're not finished." The gripping shadows morphed into hands, clawing and sinking into her flesh. Sarah clenched her fists, summoning the memory of laughter, of the brother she loved. "We'll get out of here. Together." The shadows recoiled slightly, giving her the slightest breath of space, enough to fight back. "You think this is a game?" Jason spat, his voice reverberating off the swirling abyss. "Once you're here, they own you. They'll twist your heart, feed on your weakness. It's all part of the bargain." Bursts of fear ricocheted through her. Just like the figure had said, her choice came with a price. But she couldn't let the darkness win. Not now. Not when there was still hope flickering in the distance. "Stop fighting us," came the whispers again, seductive and warm like a fading memory. "Join us." "No." Sarah screamed, summoning every ounce of her will. She remembered the shimmering mirror, its call of truth. Everything she'd seen could be warped, but she couldn't lose sight of her love for Jason. That bond could shatter this nightmare. The shadows raged, thrashing violently as Sarah stood her ground. "This ends now," she shouted, her voice fierce and defiant. And just as the darkness lunged, enveloping her once more, she envisioned the light instead, the brightness of the mirror, its promise shining through the dark. With everything she had, Sarah leapt toward that vision, shoving aside the crushing force. Light filled her, blinding and pure. The darkness screamed, a cacophony of disembodied voices echoing her name as she plunged deeper into the brilliance. Moments stretched into agonizing silence. Was this the end? Or a rebirth? Heart thudding, she felt herself unravel, as the light expanded, revealing hidden secrets. A door had opened beyond the echoes of her fear, and just as she feared being consumed, a new voice emerged, clearer and stronger. "Sarah, come back. We have to hurry." But it wasn't Jason. "Who?" she whispered, dread creeping back in, but in that moment, the light flickered, dissolving her surroundings, and shadows began to encircle her once more. Was it too late? What awaited her on the other side of this new reality? As the light faded and shadows crept back in, Sarah was overwhelmed with a rush of cold air, tugging and pulling at her as though trying to reel her back into the depths of darkness. The bone-chilling whisper of 1,000 lost souls swirled around her, urging her to relent and give in to despair. But deep within her chest, a flicker of resolve ignited, pushing back against the suffocating fear. "Jason!" she cried, the name spilling from her lips like a desperate mantra. "Where are you?" She scanned the swirling shadows, searching for some hint of the brother she once loved, praying he was lost forever. The dim lights flickered ahead, revealing a narrow path lined with discarded memories and echoes of fleeting laughter and sorrow. She hesitated but pressed forward through the dark, heart racing as the whispers turned into a maddened chant. Join us, the shadows droned, each voice steeped in anger and regret. "No!" Sarah shouted, feeling defiance rise up within her. In that moment, she recognized that these were the voices of those who had succumbed, lost in the darkness. She wouldn't become one of them. Each step she took was a reminder of her love for Jason, the memories of their childhood, the bond that had always been their safe haven no matter the storm. Suddenly, a figure rushed out from the dark, startling her. It was Jason, but not in the way she remembered. His eyes were still hollow, but they glimmered with a hint of recognition. "Sarah, you're making a mistake. You shouldn't be here," he shouted, urgency bleeding through his voice. "Help me save you," she pleaded, clutching at her chest where a familiar ache resided. "We can escape this together. You don't have to stay trapped." His face twisted in pain, and for a flickering moment, Sarah saw the boy he used to be, the brother who would protect her from all fears. "You don't understand. They'll consume you. You have to leave me." His words echoed with desperation. The shadows behind him writhed as if offended, eager to seize her again. "No. I won't leave you." Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes, unwilling to abandon the life they had shared. "We can fight them together. We can expose the truth." With every ounce of strength she had, Sarah stepped closer, reaching out to grab his hand. In that moment, a chill swept through her as voices erupted around them. The shadows roared in anger. "She is not yours. She belongs to us." They screamed, the darkness swelling, intent on swallowing her whole. A pulse of pain echoed through her as if the shadows were hunting for her very light. "Fight it, Jason," she cried. "Remember who you are." He hesitated, and for an instant, the shadows slackened their grip, revealing glimpses of the boy she loved. He blinked, and as their eyes met, recognition sparked a connection stronger than the shadows threatening to consume them. "Sarah, there's still hope." Jason's voice trembled, and Sarah felt a jolt of strength surge within them both. They were connected by more than blood, the love that coursed through their bond brightened the darkness. "Yes. Together, we can escape this." With a breath, Sarah lunged forward, the light flickering at the edges of their vision. With both hands clasped tightly around Jason's, they stepped toward the flickering light, battling against the desperate cries of the forsaken souls. "The truth is our strength," she shouted, claws of darkness grasping at their backs as they ran. "Follow the light. Don't look back," Jason yelled, his grip tightening around hers. As they pushed forward, the shadows screeched, flinging energy at them like a raging storm. But with their united will, they shattered through the darkness, illuminating the path ahead. With a last surge of determination, they plunged into the brightness, the warmth enveloping them like a protective cocoon. Light flooded their vision, washing away the cold and despair. An explosion of color exploded around them, and as they emerged, they stumbled into a bright, clean hospital room. Cedar Creek in its full, vibrant reality. They stood, breathing heavily, staring at the shift around them. The air felt lighter, the whispers vanished, and the flickering lights steadied. The sickening shadows that had haunted them were gone, leaving only traces of dread that would fade with time. Jason glanced at Sarah, eyes softening. "We did it," he whispered, disbelief coloring the words. "Yes," Sarah breathed, tears of relief flooding her eyes. "We're free." They embraced, hearts pounding with the weight of everything they had faced. The bond they shared had withstood the darkness, and now, as the sun shone through the window for the first time in ages, they knew they could rebuild. "Let us heal together," Sarah said, determination painting a new path before them, filled with hope and resilience. As they stepped out into the fresh air, Sarah turned back, looking at Cedar Creek behind them. "No more shadows. No more secrets," she vowed. Together, they left the darkness behind, ready to embrace whatever came next. You need to subscribe now. Don't miss out on the way we unravel these haunting tales. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about this shocking ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion.